somewhere long before cities, long before roads, long before the idea of time itself was measured, a human being woke up to the soft light of a rising sun. There was no alarm, no clock ticking on a wall, no list of tasks waiting, only the quiet rhythm of the earth and the simple question of the day ahead. What did they do next? Now gently let yourself settle in. This is a quiet journey into the everyday life of early humans, not the big moments we often hear about. Not the battles, not the discoveries, but the slow, ordinary hours that made up most of their lives. Because in truth, history is not only made of great events, it is made of mornings, of footsteps, of small choices repeated again and again. And if we look closely, those small moments begin to tell us something deeper. They begin to answer a quiet question. What did early humans actually do all day? Imagine the air, cool, slightly damp, carrying the smell of soil, grass, and distant trees. The world feels wide, open, and mostly untouched. There are no buildings, no roads, no distant hum of machines, only land stretching as far as the eye can see. And somewhere within this vast landscape, a small group of humans begins to stir. They are not alone, but they are not many. Perhaps 20, maybe 30 people. A group not too large because too many would make food harder to find, and not too small because safety lives in numbers. They sleep close together, not in houses as we know them, but in simple shelters or sometimes just beneath trees or inside shallow caves. Their sleep is not deep in the way ours often is. It is lighter, more aware. Even in rest, the body listens. A crack of a branch, a distant animal call, the shift of wind, all of it matters. As the sky slowly brightens, someone opens their eyes. There is no rush, no sudden movement, just a quiet awareness that night is ending. One by one, others begin to wake. Some stretch slowly. Some sit in silence. And for a few moments, nothing much happens. This is something we rarely experience today. A beginning of the day without urgency. But soon the first quiet actions begin. Someone checks the fire. If there is still a faint glow of embers from the night before, it is carefully protected. Fire is not something easily created at will, at least not in every moment, so keeping it alive matters. A few small sticks are added, a gentle breath, and slowly the flame returns. This simple act is one of the most important parts of their day. Fire gives warmth. It gives light. It keeps animals away. And perhaps most importantly, it transforms food. Now, as the light grows stronger, the group begins to move more, but not in the way we might expect. There is no fixed schedule, no strict plan written anywhere. Instead, their day unfolds through awareness. They look around, they listen, they sense. Where is food likely to be today? This is the quiet center of their daily life. Finding food. But even this is not always a frantic hunt. Sometimes it is a slow walk, a careful observation. Early humans did not simply wander randomly. Over time, they came to understand their surroundings deeply. They knew which plants grew where, which seasons brought certain fruits, where animals tended to move. This knowledge lived in memory, not written down, but passed through experience and shared quietly with others. A small group begins to prepare to leave. Not everyone goes. This is important. Some stay behind. Perhaps older members of the group. Perhaps those caring for children. Life is shared. Responsibilities are flexible. Those who leave do not rush. They move steadily. Their eyes scan the ground, the trees, the horizon. A broken branch might mean an animal passed through. Fresh tracks in the soil tell a story. Even the silence or sudden absence of sound can mean something. But hunting is not the only task. In many ways, gathering is more reliable. Fruits, roots, nuts, seeds. These are often found more consistently than animals. So as they walk, they look carefully. A familiar plant, a cluster of berries, but they do not take everything. This is something subtle but important. They often leave some behind, not because of rules written down, but because of understanding. If everything is taken today, there will be nothing tomorrow. Meanwhile, back at the camp, the day unfolds differently. Those who stayed behind begin their own quiet tasks. Children wake more fully now. They do not go to school. They do not sit in rows or follow a structured lesson, but they are always learning. They watch, they imitate, they ask simple questions, and through this they slowly understand the world. An older member might show a child how to hold a simple tool, not with a formal explanation, just by doing it slowly, allowing the child to observe. This is how knowledge moves forward, not in books but in moments. Time passes, but it does not feel like time in the way we know it. There are no hours, no minutes, only light and shadow, only hunger and rest. As the sun rises higher, the temperature changes, the air becomes warmer, movement slows. This is another quiet rhythm of their day. They do not push constantly, they rest when needed. Perhaps sitting in the shade, perhaps lying down for a short while. This is not laziness. It is balance. Energy is valuable, and using it wisely is part of survival. Now far from the camp, the group that left earlier may have found something. Perhaps tracks become clearer. Perhaps they move more carefully now. Hunting, when it happens, is not loud or chaotic. It is patient, slow, focused, and often uncertain. There is no guarantee of success. Many attempts end with nothing, and that is simply accepted. If they do succeed, the moment is not one of loud celebration. It is quieter than that, because even in success there is understanding. This food will not last forever, and so the cycle continues. As the sun begins its slow journey downward, people start to return from different directions, some carrying gathered food, some empty-handed, but there is no anger, no blame, because tomorrow things may be different. Back at the camp, something subtle but important begins to happen. Food is shared, not divided strictly, not measured carefully, but shared in a way that supports the group, because survival is not individual. It is collective. And as the light softens, the day begins to slow again. The fire becomes central once more. People gather around it, not for entertainment as we know it, but for connection, for warmth, for quiet moments together. Stories may be told, not always long or dramatic, sometimes simple, about a place, an animal, a memory, and in these stories knowledge is carried forward. The sky darkens, Stars begin to appear, clearer than we ever see today. And under this vast sky, the group settles again, not with thoughts of tomorrow's schedule, but with a simple trust in the rhythm of life. And yet, as calm as this life may seem, as slow and simple as it appears, a quiet question remains. Was it truly simple, or was there something deeper, something more complex, hidden within this way of living? Now let us move a little deeper into this world, because what they did all day was not just about survival. It was also about understanding the land, the animals, and even each other. And this raises another quiet question. How did early humans learn so much without writing anything down? There is something quiet, almost invisible, happening in the background of everything we have seen so far, a kind of learning that never stops. Early humans did not sit down to study. They did not separate learning from living. Instead, learning was woven into every moment, every step outside the camp, every sound in the distance. Every small success and every failure, all of it became part of a growing understanding. Now, imagine walking through the land as they did, not quickly, not distracted, but slowly, with attention. You begin to notice things. The way certain plants only grow near water, the way birds suddenly go silent when something moves nearby, the way the wind carries scent. At first, these may seem like small details, but over time, they form a kind of map. Not a map drawn on paper, but a map inside the mind. This mental map is always changing, always updating, and it is shared not through writing but through experience. A younger person walks beside an older one. No long explanation is needed, just a quiet gesture, a pause, a look, and slowly the knowledge passes on. But this raises something interesting. If knowledge is not written, how does it last? How does it survive beyond one lifetime? The answer lies in something deeply human: stories. As evening settles and the fire begins to glow again, this is when something special happens. People gather closer. The world outside grows darker, quieter. And in this quiet, words begin to flow, not loudly, not for performance, but gently. Someone begins to speak, perhaps about a place far away, perhaps about a time when the river flooded, perhaps about an animal that behaved in a strange way. At first, it may sound like a simple story, but hidden inside is knowledge: where to go, what to avoid, when to be careful. A story about a dangerous animal is not just a story, it is a lesson, a memory made easier to remember. And so, without realizing it, early humans created one of the most powerful tools of all. Not a weapon, not a tool made of stone, but something invisible: shared memory. Now, as time passes slowly, let us look at another part of their day, something we have not yet fully explored: tools. Early humans did not have machines, no metal tools, no complex devices, but they were far from helpless. In fact, their tools, though simple, were carefully made. A sharp stone shaped just right, a wooden stick hardened by fire, a piece of bone used in ways we might not immediately understand. Making these tools was not a quick task. It required patience, skill, and most importantly, practice. Imagine sitting for a long time holding a piece of stone. You strike it gently again and again, watching how it breaks, feeling the shape slowly change. Too much force and it shatters, too little and nothing happens. This is not just physical work, it is a kind of thinking, a quiet problem solving. And over many attempts, a tool begins to form, not perfect, but useful, and that is enough. Now, here is something interesting. Different groups in different places began to make tools in slightly different ways, without ever meeting each other, without ever sharing directly. This suggests something deeper, a kind of intelligence shared across humanity, a natural ability to observe, to experiment, to improve. But tools were not only for hunting, they were also for preparing food, cutting, crushing, shaping. And this brings us to another quiet part of their day, eating. For us today, eating is often quick, sometimes rushed, sometimes done without much thought. But for early humans, eating was different. It was slower, more deliberate, because food was not always guaranteed. When food was available, it was valued, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a simple, quiet appreciation. People gathered together, food was shared, and in this sharing something important happened. Connections grew stronger, trust deepened. Because in a world where survival is uncertain, sharing is not just kindness, it is security. Now let us pause here for a moment and consider something we often overlook. Did early humans have free time? At first, it may seem like the answer is no. Their lives were about survival, finding food, staying safe. But if we look more closely, a different picture begins to appear. There were moments, small, quiet gaps in the day, moments where nothing urgent was happening. During these times, people did not simply sit in silence. They interacted, they played, especially children. Children in particular had a kind of freedom. They explored, they experimented, they climbed, ran, imitated animals. And through play they learned, not through instruction, but through experience. Even adults at times engaged in simple forms of play, throwing objects, testing skills, laughing softly. This is important because it shows that their lives were not only about struggle, there was space for lightness. Now, as the day moves gently forward, another question begins to rise. What about relationships? How did early humans connect with each other? Not just as a group, but as individuals. The answer is not fully clear, but we can imagine certain things. They likely formed close bonds. Small groups mean constant interaction. You see the same faces every day. You depend on each other. There is no easy way to avoid conflict. No separate rooms, no private spaces as we know them. And so they must have developed ways to manage this, not through written rules, but through understanding, through habit, through shared expectations. Perhaps disagreements were quiet, resolved slowly, or perhaps sometimes people simply moved away, joining another group. This fluid movement is another interesting part of their lives. Groups were not always fixed. They changed, shifted, adapted. Now, as we move deeper into this world, we begin to see something clearly. Their day was not controlled by time, it was guided by rhythm. The rhythm of light and dark, the rhythm of hunger and rest, the rhythm of seasons. And this rhythm shaped everything. As evening returns once more, the cycle repeats. The fire is tended, food is shared, stories are told. But now, with everything we have seen, a deeper question begins to form. If their lives were so connected to nature, so aware, so balanced, then why did things change? Why did humans move away from this way of life? What caused the shift from small groups to villages to cities to the world we know today? This is where the story begins to change, slowly, almost invisibly. And to understand that change, we must look at something that seems simple but holds enormous impact: food. Not just as something to find, but as something to control. But before we step into that shift, there is one more quiet layer of their daily life we have yet to explore. Something more subtle, something internal. What did early humans think about when there was nothing urgent to do? What did their minds wander toward under a sky full of stars? And could it be that even then they were asking questions not so different from ours today? There is a quiet moment, just after the fire has settled, when the flames are no longer rising high, but gently glowing. The night has fully arrived now. The sky above is wide, filled with stars so clear, so countless that it almost feels overwhelming. And in this stillness, something subtle begins to happen. The body rests, but the mind slowly opens. What did early humans think about in moments like this? We cannot hear their thoughts directly. There are no written records, no voices preserved, but we can imagine, gently based on what we know about being human. Perhaps they looked up at the stars and wondered, not in complex words, not in scientific ideas, but in simple curiosity. What are those lights? Why do they move? Why does the sky change? These are quiet questions, and even today they are not so different from our own. Now, as time passes slowly, let us move deeper into this inner world, because daily life is not only made of actions, it is also made of thoughts, feelings, and small moments of awareness. During the day, early humans were often focused, looking, listening, moving carefully. But in these quiet evening hours, the mind could wander. Perhaps someone remembers a place from many days ago, a river, a tree, a path. Memory becomes important here, not just for survival, but for identity, a sense of knowing where you have been. And slowly, over many days, many seasons, these memories begin to form something larger, a sense of the world. Now, here is something interesting. Without maps, without books, early humans still carried a deep understanding of space. They knew distances, directions, patterns, all stored inside the mind. This ability is something we still have today, but we often do not use it in the same way because our world is different. We rely on tools, on devices, on systems built around us. But for them, the mind itself was the main tool. Now, let us gently shift our attention again, back to the daytime, back to movement. We have spoken about hunting, gathering, resting, but there is another quiet activity that filled many parts of their day: walking. Early humans walked a lot, not in a rushed way, not for exercise, but as a natural part of living. They moved from place to place, sometimes short distances, sometimes longer journeys, following food, following water, following the seasons. And in this walking, something else happened. They became deeply connected to the land, not as something separate, but as something familiar. Imagine walking the same path again and again. You begin to notice small changes, a new plant growing, a tree losing its leaves, the ground becoming softer after rain. These details become meaningful. They tell you what is happening. They guide your decisions. Now let us pause here for a moment, because this raises another quiet question. Did early humans feel a sense of ownership over the land? The idea of "this is mine" may not have existed in the way we understand it today. There were no fences, no property lines. Instead, there may have been a different kind of relationship, a sense of belonging rather than owning. The land provided, and in return they moved with it, adapted to it, respected its limits even without formal rules. Now, as we move a little deeper, let us look at something more delicate, something often overlooked: care. Life in early human groups was not only about strength or skill, it also involved care. When someone was injured, they were not simply left behind. In many cases, evidence suggests they were helped, supported. This is remarkable because helping someone who cannot immediately contribute requires something beyond survival. It requires empathy. And this tells us something important. Even in these early times, humans were not just surviving. They were connecting, feeling, supporting each other in quiet ways. Now, as the day continues, let us return once more to the group at rest. The afternoon light begins to soften, shadows grow longer. Children play nearby. Adults sit or work slowly with their hands, perhaps shaping tools, perhaps preparing materials. There is no loud noise, no constant movement, just a steady, gentle flow of activity. And in this calm, something else quietly develops: observation. Early humans were careful observers. They had to be. They noticed patterns: when certain animals appeared, when certain plants were ready, when the weather began to shift. Over time, these observations formed a kind of understanding of seasons, not named as we name them today, but felt, recognized. And this understanding helped guide their movement: when to stay, when to move, where to go next. Now this brings us closer to an important turning point. But before we reach it, there is one more layer we must gently explore: communication. How did early humans speak to each other? What did their language sound like? We do not know exactly, but we do know that language was developing, becoming more complex over time. At first, communication may have been simple gestures, sounds, expressions. But slowly these sounds began to carry more meaning, more detail, more nuance. And this changed everything, because once ideas can be shared clearly, they can grow. A small observation becomes a shared idea becomes knowledge, and knowledge begins to shape the future. Now, as the sun begins to set once again, we return to the fire, to the gathering, to the quiet circle of light in the darkness. But now, with everything we have seen, this moment feels different. Because the fire is not just warmth, it is a center, a place where everything comes together. The day's experiences, the knowledge gained, the stories remembered. And as people sit together, there is a sense, quiet but strong, that they are part of something. Not just individuals, but a group, a shared life. And yet, even in this calm, balanced way of living, change is already beginning, very slowly, almost unnoticed. Because somewhere at some point, a human being does something slightly different. Instead of simply gathering food, they begin to wonder, what if this could grow here? It is a small thought, almost invisible, but it carries a huge possibility. And this thought will slowly begin to change everything. But before that change fully unfolds, there is something important to understand, something quiet but powerful. Why did this way of life last for so long? Why did early humans live like this for thousands, even millions of years without major change? What made this rhythm, this balance, so stable? This question leads us deeper into the heart of human life itself. There is something almost surprising when we step back and look at this life from a distance. For thousands of years, early humans lived in this slow rhythm, waking with the light, moving with the land, resting when needed, sharing what they found. And for a very long time, this way of life did not change very much. This raises a quiet and important question. Why? Why didn't they rush towards something different? Why didn't they build faster, create more, change everything sooner? The answer is not loud or dramatic. It is simple, because for a long time this way of life worked. It provided enough. Not abundance in the way we think of it today, but enough to continue. Enough to survive, and even in quiet moments to feel a kind of balance. Early humans were not trying to improve life in the way we often try today. They were not chasing constant progress. They were responding to what was around them. And when things work, there is no strong reason to change them. Now, let us move gently into this idea, because it helps us understand something deeper about their daily lives. Their days were not filled with endless tasks, not because they were doing less, but because their needs were different. They needed food, they needed safety, they needed connection. And once those needs were met, even for a short time, there was space. Space to sit, to watch, to think without urgency. This is something we rarely experience now, a moment where nothing is demanding our attention. But for them, these moments were part of life, not separate from it. Now, this does not mean their lives were always easy. There were difficult days, days without enough food, days of danger, of uncertainty. But those moments came and went. They were part of the rhythm, not the entire story. And over time, early humans became very good at adapting. This is one of the most important parts of their daily life, adaptation. If the weather changed, they adjusted. If food became scarce, they moved. If danger appeared, they avoided it or faced it together. Flexibility was their strength, not control. Now, as we move a little deeper, let us consider something that quietly shaped their lives every single day: the environment. Early humans did not live in one kind of place. They lived in forests, grasslands, near rivers, along coastlines. Each environment different, each one asking for different skills, different awareness. A group living near a river would understand water deeply. They would know when it rises, when it becomes dangerous, when it provides food. A group in open grassland would understand movement, the patterns of animals, the direction of wind. And so daily life was not the same everywhere. It changed depending on where they were. But something remained constant: attention. In no matter the place, early humans paid attention because attention is what kept them alive. Now let us pause here and look at something even more subtle: time. We often think of time as something fixed: hours, minutes, schedules. But for early humans, time felt different. There was no 9 in the morning, no deadline. Instead, time was felt through light, through hunger, through movement. A long day was simply a day where much happened. A short day was one that passed quietly. This way of experiencing time changes everything, because without strict time there is less pressure, less urgency. Life unfolds instead of being pushed. Now this brings us to something important, something that slowly begins to appear. As we look closer, even though their lives were simple in many ways, they were also rich in experience. They felt the ground beneath their feet every day. They saw the sky clearly every night. They listened deeply to the world around them. These are small things, but repeated every day they create a strong connection, a sense of being part of something larger. Now, as the sun begins to lower again and the shadows stretch across the land, we return once more to the evening. The fire is lit again. People gather. The same quiet circle forms. But tonight, something feels slightly different, not in a dramatic way, just a small shift. Someone brings back more food than usual. Perhaps a place was found where plants grow in abundance. At first, this is simply good fortune, a lucky day. But then something happens. Someone remembers this place clearly, precisely. And a thought begins to form. What if we return here again? This is not a new idea. They already revisit places. They already follow patterns. But now the idea becomes a little stronger, a little more intentional. Instead of just following what appears, they begin to think about returning at the right time. This is a small step, but it changes something. Because now the future begins to matter just a little more. Not in a distant way, but in a practical sense. Planning begins to emerge. Now, as time passes slowly, this idea grows. Certain places become familiar, reliable. And instead of moving constantly, some groups begin to stay a little longer in one place. Not forever, but longer than before. This is subtle but important, because staying longer allows for something new: observation over time. They begin to notice not just where plants grow, but how they grow. When they appear, how long they last, what affects them. And this leads to another quiet thought. What if we could help this process? Not fully control it, not yet, but influence it. Just a little. Now this is where the story begins to change in a deeper way, but slowly, always slowly. Because early humans do not suddenly become farmers. There is no sudden shift. Only small experiments, small changes, repeated over many generations. But before we move fully into that transformation, there is one more question we must gently explore. If their lives were already balanced, if their needs were being met, if their days held both effort and rest, then why did this change continue? Why did humans keep moving towards something different instead of staying in this rhythm? Was it necessity, curiosity, or something even deeper quietly guiding them forward? This question will lead us into the next part of their journey, a journey not just of survival but of transformation. Do you want me to continue? Continue, there is a moment so small, so quiet that no one at the time would have noticed its importance. A hand dropping a few seeds onto the ground, not carefully placed, not planned in a grand way, just a simple action, perhaps even accidental. And then time passes, rain falls, the sun returns, the soil shifts gently. And one day something grows, not in a distant place, not discovered while walking, but here, close, familiar. At first, this might not seem unusual. Plants grow everywhere, that is part of life. But slowly, a thought begins to settle, a quiet realization. What if this was not just chance? What if we could do this again? Now let us move gently into this moment, because this is where daily life begins to change, not suddenly, not all at once, but step by step. Early humans had always gathered plants. They knew which ones were useful, which ones were safe, which ones returned each season. But now something shifts. Instead of only finding, they begin to consider growing. At first, this is uncertain. There is no clear method, no written knowledge, only observation, memory, and patience. They begin to stay in certain places a little longer, watching, waiting. And in this waiting, they begin to learn something new. Growth takes time. This is different from hunting, different from gathering, because now effort does not bring immediate results. You place something into the ground and then you wait. Days pass, nothing seems to happen. And yet, beneath the surface, something is changing. This requires a new kind of thinking, a longer view, a sense of future. Now, as this understanding grows, daily life begins to adjust around it. People cannot move as freely as before, not if they want to return to the same place to see what has grown. And so movement slows, groups begin to settle just a little more. Not fully, not permanently, but enough to create a new rhythm. Days are no longer only about finding food. They are also about checking, observing, returning. And this changes how time feels, because now there is something to wait for, something expected. Now let us pause here and notice something important. This change brings both ease and difficulty. On one hand, having food grow nearby reduces the need to search constantly. It brings a kind of stability. But on the other hand, it creates dependence. If the plants do not grow well, if the rain does not come, if something goes wrong, there is less flexibility, less ability to simply move on. And so, a new kind of uncertainty appears, different from before. Now, as seasons begin to matter more clearly, people start to notice patterns more deeply. Certain times are better for planting, certain times are better for harvesting. This awareness grows slowly across generations, and with it, something else begins to form: routine. Not a strict schedule, but repeated actions. Checking the same place, returning at the right time, doing similar tasks again and again. This is new because earlier, each day was more fluid, more open. Now parts of the day become predictable, and with predictability comes a different way of living. Now let us gently move forward, because as groups stay longer in one place, something else begins to happen. Shelters change. Before, shelters were simple, temporary, easy to leave behind. But now, with longer stays, people begin to build more carefully, more securely. Not large structures, not cities, but something more stable than before. This is another small shift, but it matters. Because once you begin to build something, you begin to invest in a place. And when you invest, you stay. Now, as time continues, these small changes begin to connect. Growing food, staying longer, building better shelters, each one influencing the other. And slowly, very slowly, the life of early humans begins to move in a new direction. But even now, much of their day remains familiar. They still walk, they still observe, they still gather, still share. The old ways do not disappear, they blend with the new. Now let us return to a quiet evening once more. The fire is lit, people sit together. But tonight the conversation is slightly different. Someone speaks about a place where plants grew well. Another speaks about a time when they did not. These are not just stories now, they are knowledge about the future. And slowly, across many nights, this knowledge grows. Now, here is something interesting. As people stay longer in one place, groups begin to grow slightly larger. More people can live together when food is more predictable. And with more people comes something new, complexity, more relationships, more interactions, more chances for both cooperation and conflict. This changes daily life in subtle ways. Decisions may take longer, differences may appear more often, and so new ways of living together begin to form. Not written laws, not formal systems, but shared understandings. Who does what? Who decides certain things? How to resolve small disagreements? All of this develops slowly, quietly. Now, as we move a little deeper, another important change begins to appear: storage. When food is gathered, it is usually eaten soon. But when food is grown, sometimes there is more than needed in one moment. And so, people begin to keep it, store it. This is new, because storing food means thinking ahead, preparing for times when food may not be available. And with storage, something else appears: a sense of having, not just using but keeping. This is a very subtle shift, but it changes how people think. Because once something can be stored, it can also be protected. And this introduces new questions. Who does it belong to? How is it shared? Now daily life becomes a little more layered, a little more complex. And yet, beneath all these changes, something remains the same. The quiet rhythm of the day, the rising sun, the movement of people, the gathering around the fire. Even as life transforms, these simple patterns continue. Now, as the night deepens and the fire begins to fade, we find ourselves at a gentle turning point. The life of early humans is no longer only about moving with nature, it is beginning to shape nature. And this changes everything. But this change is still unfolding, still incomplete, because the world of villages, of fields, of permanent homes has not fully arrived yet. We are standing in between two ways of living. And in this in-between space, daily life is both familiar and new. So now, a final quiet question for this part of the journey. As humans began to change their way of living, did they gain something more valuable? Or did they slowly begin to lose something that had always been there in the older rhythm of life? This is not an easy question, and the answer is not simple. But it is a question worth carrying as we move forward. There is a quiet stillness just before the first light of morning returns. The fire has almost faded now. Only a soft glow remains pulsing gently in the dark. Around it, people sleep. Some curled close together, some lying slightly apart, each resting in their own quiet way. And in this moment, everything feels unchanged, as if this way of life could continue forever. But beneath that calm surface, something has already begun to shift. Not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, like the movement of seasons. When the sun rises again, the day begins as it always has. People wake, they stretch, they look around. But now there is something new quietly present in their thoughts, a place to return to, a patch of land where something is growing. This changes the feeling of the morning just slightly. Before, the question was simple: where will we find food today? Now there is another layer: should we go back and check? This small change begins to shape the entire day. A few people set out not just to search, but to revisit. Their steps are a little more certain, their direction less open. They are not wandering in the same way anymore. They are moving with purpose towards something known. And when they arrive, they pause. The ground looks different, small green shapes pushing through the soil. At first, they simply observe, no quick action, no immediate understanding. But over time, these small moments repeat. Return, observe, remember, and slowly a pattern becomes clear. This is how learning deepens, not in one moment, but in many small ones connected together. Now, as this awareness grows, daily life begins to organize itself around it, not completely, but gently. Some people spend more time near these growing places, watching, protecting, learning. Others still move farther away, hunting, gathering. The group begins to divide its attention. This is something new because before, most people shared similar tasks. Now, roles begin to form, not fixed roles, not permanent, but patterns. Some become more skilled at observing plants, some continue to follow animals, and this creates a different kind of balance. Now let us pause here because something deeper is happening beneath the surface. As humans begin to influence their environment, their relationship with it begins to change. Before, they followed the land. Now, in small ways, the land begins to follow them. This is subtle but powerful because it shifts the sense of control. Not complete control, not even close, but a beginning. Now, as days pass and these patterns repeat, something else begins to appear. Expectation. People begin to expect that plants will grow, that food will be there if they return. This is new because expectation creates both comfort and risk. When expectations are met, there is a sense of ease. But when they are not, there is uncertainty. In a different form, now daily life carries this quiet tension, not overwhelming but present, a hope that things will go as expected. And this shapes decisions. Should we stay longer? Should we move on? Should we wait or search elsewhere? These questions become part of everyday thinking. Now, as the sun moves higher and the day warms again, we return to the small group near the growing plants. They begin to notice something else. Not all plants grow the same. Some are stronger. Some grow faster. Some produce more. And without fully realizing it, they begin to favor certain ones. Perhaps they leave those plants untouched. Perhaps they return to them more often. This is the beginning of selection, a quiet process, no plan, no design, just small choices repeated over time. And these choices slowly shape the future. Now, as the afternoon light softens, we move back to the camp. Life here feels both familiar and slightly different. There is still rest, still quiet conversation, still the gentle rhythm of shared living. But now there is also something being built, not just shelters, not just tools, but patterns of living, repeated ways of doing things. And over time, these patterns become traditions, not written, not explained in detail, but followed because they work. Now, as evening returns once again, the fire becomes the center of the group. People gather as they always have. But now, the stories carry new kinds of meaning. They are not only about animals or distant places. They are also about time. When something happened, when something grew, when something failed. Time begins to stretch beyond the present moment, into memory and into expectation, and this changes how people think. Now let us gently move deeper into one of the most important changes of all, staying. Before, movement was constant, a natural response to the world. Now staying becomes possible, even desirable in some ways. Not forever, but for longer periods. And with staying comes a deeper connection to a single place. People begin to know the land not just broadly but intimately. Every small detail, every change. And this creates something new, a sense of place. Not just a place you pass through, but a place you return to. A place that begins to feel familiar, stable, even meaningful. Now, this may seem like a small emotional shift, but it has powerful effects. Because once a place feels important, people begin to protect it, care for it, stay connected to it. And slowly, very slowly, this leads towards something we now recognize. Home, not a structure, not a building, but an idea, a feeling, a place where life gathers again and again. Now, as the fire burns low and the stars return overhead, we begin to see the full picture more clearly. The daily life of early humans has not disappeared. It is still there. In the walking, the observing, sharing, but it is changing, layer by layer, becoming something new. And yet a quiet question remains. As humans began to stay, to grow food, to build, to create patterns, did their lives become easier or simply more complex? And as complexity grew, did something of the older life begin to fade? This question does not have a single answer, but it gently guides us forward into the next part of this journey. Because what comes next will shape not only their days, but the entire future of human life. There is a soft feeling in the air now, a sense that something is quietly settling into place. Not suddenly, not completely, but enough to be noticed if you look closely. The place where the group has stayed no longer feels temporary. The ground carries familiar footprints. The shelters stand a little stronger. the paths between them gently worn by repeated steps. This is no longer just a stop along the way, it is becoming something more. When the morning light arrives again, people wake as they always have. But now their first thoughts are not only about movement, they are also about what is already here. The plants growing nearby, the stored food, the small changes that happened yesterday. And so the day begins not with a question of where to go, but often with what needs to be done here. This is new, because now daily life includes care. Care for the growing plants, care for the place itself, care for what has been built. Slowly over time, some people step out toward the edges of this familiar space. They look at the ground, noticing small details. Is the soil too dry? Have animals passed through? These observations guide their actions, quiet decisions made without discussion. Others remain closer to the center. They prepare food. They repair small things. A tool that has worn down, a shelter that needs strengthening. Before, there was less need to fix things because things were not kept for long. Now, maintenance becomes part of the day. And this adds another layer to life. Not just finding but keeping, not just using but caring for what exists. Now, as the sun rises higher, we begin to notice something else. The group itself feels slightly different. There are more people here now, not many more, but enough to feel. Because a place that offers stability can support a few more lives. And with more people, the sound of the day changes. More voices, more movement, more interactions. Children move through the space, playing, watching, learning. They know this place. They recognize its corners, its paths, its quiet spots. This is different from before because now childhood includes familiarity with one location, not constant change. And this shapes how they grow. They begin to understand not just the wide world, but a specific part of it very deeply. Now, as time passes gently into the middle of the day, another quiet shift becomes visible. Work begins to feel a little more continuous. Before, effort often came in moments, a hunt, a gathering followed by rest. Now there are more ongoing tasks, checking plants, repairing shelters, watching stored food. None of these tasks are heavy on their own, but together they create a steady flow of activity. And so the day feels slightly fuller, slightly more structured, still calm, still quiet, but less open than before. Now let us pause here and notice something important. With this new way of living, people begin to spend more time in the same space. And this changes relationships. Before, movement allowed distance. If tension grew, space could be created. Now, closeness is more constant. This can strengthen bonds, but it can also create small difficulties. Differences become more visible, small disagreements harder to avoid. And so, new ways of living together begin to take shape. Not formal rules, but shared expectations. Who helps with certain tasks, who makes certain decisions, how to respond when something goes wrong. These understandings develop slowly, through experience, through repetition. Now, as the afternoon light softens, we return to the idea of storage once more, because this simple act continues to shape daily life. Stored food must be protected from animals, from weather, from loss. And so people begin to think ahead more often. Where to keep things, how to cover them, how to check them regularly. These small concerns become part of the day, and with them comes a growing sense of responsibility. Now let us move gently into another subtle change. Value. Before, most things were used and left behind. Now some things are kept, saved, protected, and slowly certain items begin to feel more important. A well-made tool, a strong shelter, a good storage place. These are no longer just useful, they are valued. And with value comes attachment, a feeling of not wanting to lose something. This is a quiet emotional shift, but it shapes behavior. People take more care, they become more cautious. Now, as evening approaches once again, the group gathers near the fire. The familiar circle forms, the light flickers softly. But tonight there is more to share. Someone speaks about how the plants are growing. Another speaks about a tool that worked well. These are small updates, but they matter because they connect the group, keep everyone aware. Now something else begins to appear, a sense of memory tied to this place. Not just individual memory, but shared memory. We remember when this area was empty. We remember when we first stayed here. These quiet reflections begin to create a sense of history, not written, not recorded, but felt. And this changes how people see themselves, not just as individuals moving through the world, but as a group with a past. Now, as the fire burns lower and the stars return above, we arrive at another quiet realization. The daily life of early humans is no longer only about the present moment. It now includes the past and the future, memory and expectation. And this changes everything. Because when humans begin to think beyond the present, their choices begin to shape what comes next more strongly. Now, a final gentle thought for this part of the journey. As life becomes more settled, more structured, more connected to a single place, something new is being created. Not just a way of living, but the beginning of something much larger. The first steps toward villages, toward communities, toward the world we recognize today. But in this quiet beginning, there is still something of the old life remaining. The calm rhythm, the connection to nature, the simple awareness of each day. And so we stand once again between two worlds, one slowly fading, one slowly forming. And in this space, daily life continues, gentle, changing, unfolding. The night passes quietly as it always has. A soft wind moves across the land, the fire fades into ash, and slowly the first light of a new day begins to return. But this morning feels just a little different, not in a way that can be clearly seen, but in a way that can be gently felt. Because now this place is no longer new, it holds memory. When people wake, they are not just waking into a new day. They are waking into a place they know. The ground beneath them feels familiar. The shelters feel known. Even the air seems to carry something remembered. And so the day begins not with discovery, but with continuation. People rise slowly. Some move toward the growing plants. Others stay close, tending to small, quiet tasks. The rhythm is still gentle, still calm, but now it has a pattern. And over time, patterns become habits. This is where daily life begins to change more deeply. Before, each day unfolded in a new way. Now parts of the day begin to repeat, checking the same places, doing the same kinds of work, returning to the same spots again and again. At first, this repetition brings ease because it removes uncertainty. You know where to go, you know what to do. But slowly it also brings something else, a sense of routine. Now let us pause here because routine is something we understand very well today. It can feel comforting, but it can also feel limiting. And this is true even in these early moments. Some people may feel at ease in this new rhythm. Others may feel a quiet restlessness, a memory of movement, of wide open days without fixed patterns. We cannot know exactly how they felt, but we can imagine gently. Because even now humans carry both needs, the need for stability and the desire for freedom. Now, as the day continues, we begin to notice another change. Time is becoming more noticeable. Before, time flowed quietly, unmeasured, unstructured. Now, certain moments begin to matter more. When to return to the plants, when to prepare food, when to gather together. These moments are not marked by clocks, but they are felt more clearly. And slowly, daily life becomes more organized around them. Now, as the sun rises higher, we return to the growing areas once again. Something interesting is happening. People are beginning to interact with the plants more directly, not just observing, but adjusting, clearing small areas, removing unwanted growth, protecting certain plants. These actions are small, but they represent a shift from observing nature to shaping it. And this requires attention every day. Now, daily life includes responsibility in a new way, because what is being shaped must be maintained. And this ties people more closely to the land. Now, let us gently move to another part of the day, the center of the group where people gather. Here, something else is slowly forming, a sense of shared space. Before, space was open, unclaimed. Now certain areas begin to feel like they belong to the group. Places for sleeping, places for working, places for storing food. These are not marked by lines or walls, but they are understood. And this creates order, not forced, but natural. Now, as more time passes, and more days repeat, these patterns grow stronger. Children grow up within them. They learn not only how to survive, but how to live within a place. This shapes their thinking, their expectations. For them, this way of life begins to feel normal. Now let us pause again and notice something deeper. Change does not always feel like change when it happens slowly. For those living in it, this new way of life may not feel new at all. It simply feels like life. Now, as afternoon turns toward evening, we return once more to the gathering. The fire is lit again. People come together. But now the conversation carries a slightly different tone. There is more planning, more discussion of what will happen next, not far into the future, but further than before. And this quiet expansion of thought begins to shape everything. Now something else begins to appear very gently. Comparison. People begin to notice differences. Who gathers more? Who builds better? Who observes more carefully? These differences are not yet strong, not yet defined, but they are there, and over time they may grow. Now, as the fire burns low and the stars fill the sky once again, we return to the quiet stillness of night. But this stillness is no longer the same as before, because now the mind carries more memory, more expectation, more connection to place. And with this comes a deeper kind of thinking, not just about today, but about what lies ahead. Now, as we rest in this moment, a gentle question begins to form once again. As humans became more settled, more connected to place, more involved in shaping their world, did they move closer to comfort or further away from the quiet freedom they once had? Perhaps both are true, because every gain carries a change, and every change reshapes daily life in ways both seen and unseen. Now the story continues to unfold, because what begins here will slowly lead to something even greater. Not quickly, not all at once, but step by step across many generations, toward villages, toward communities, toward a new way of being human. And yet, even as that future approaches, a part of the old life still remains. In the quiet morning light, in the shared fire at night, in the simple act of living one day at a time. And so we continue gently forward. The days continue to pass softly, almost blending into one another. Morning light, gentle work, afternoon rest, evening fire and night, again and again. And within this repetition, something begins to take root, not in the soil this time, but in the human mind. A sense of predictability. People begin to feel that certain things will happen, that the sun will rise, that the plants will grow, that the group will remain here at least for a while. This feeling is quiet, but it changes how a day begins. There is less uncertainty than before, less need to search endlessly, and with that comes a subtle shift in attention. People begin to notice not just what is necessary, but what is possible. Now let us move gently into this idea, because it marks another turning point in daily life. When survival becomes slightly more stable, the mind begins to open in new ways. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but slowly, like a door opening just a little. A person shaping a tool might spend a bit more time making it smoother. Not because it must be, but because it can be. Another might arrange stones more carefully around the fire, not for survival, but for order. These are small things, almost invisible, but they carry meaning, because they show something new, care beyond necessity. Now, as this continues, daily life begins to include moments of refinement, doing things not just to survive, but to do them well. And this quiet desire grows over time. Now, as the sun rises higher, we return once more to the center of the group. Something else is beginning to form here. A sense of shared rhythm, not just in action, but in understanding. People begin to expect certain behaviors from each other. That someone will check the plants, that someone will tend the fire, that someone will watch over stored food. These expectations are not spoken loudly, but they are felt. And when they are not met, it is noticed. This is how early forms of social structure begin. Not through rules, but through repeated patterns. Now let us pause here and notice something important. With shared expectations comes a new kind of awareness, awareness of others, not just as companions but as individuals with roles. This deepens relationships, but it can also create pressure, because now actions affect the group in clearer ways. Now, as the day moves gently forward, we begin to see another subtle change. Time is no longer only about today or tomorrow. It begins to stretch even further. People start to remember seasons more clearly. When the rains came, when the ground was dry, when food was plentiful and when it was not. These memories begin to guide decisions, not just immediate ones but longer ones. Should we stay through the next season? Should we prepare for less food? These questions become part of quiet conversations. Now daily life includes something new, preparation. Not urgent, not constant, but present. Now, as we move deeper into the afternoon, let us look at another gentle shift. Objects. Before, most objects were simple and temporary. Now some begin to last longer. Tools are kept, shelters are maintained, storage spaces are reused. And over time, certain objects begin to carry meaning. A tool made carefully, used many times, it becomes familiar, almost personal. This is new, because now people begin to form connections, not just with places, but with things. Now, as evening approaches, we return once more to the fire. But tonight, there is a different kind of quiet. Not empty, not still, but thoughtful, because now life includes more to consider, more to remember, more to plan, more to maintain, and yet the calm remains. The fire still flickers gently, the stars still stretch across the sky. Some things do not change. Now, as people sit together, something else begins to appear very softly. Teaching. Not just through watching, but through gentle guidance. An older person may now show a younger one more directly when to plant, how to shape a tool, where to store food, because now knowledge has grown more complex and it needs to be passed on more carefully. This deepens the role of experience. Those who have lived longer, who have seen more seasons, they carry something valuable. And so, listening becomes important. Now, as the fire burns lower and the night deepens once again, we return to stillness. But it is a different stillness than before. It holds more memory, more structure, more connection. And within this, a quiet realization begins to form. Human life is changing, not in a way that can be clearly seen in one moment, but in a way that can be felt across many days. Now, a final gentle question for this part of the journey. As life becomes more stable, more structured, more connected to place, objects, and roles, does it bring a deeper sense of security? Or does it slowly create new kinds of worry? Because to care for something is also to risk losing it. This balance between comfort and concern will continue to shape the days ahead. And so, we move forward slowly into the next quiet chapter of human life. The morning arrives once again softly, without announcement. Light spreads slowly across the land, touching the ground, the shelters, the quiet shapes of people waking from sleep. By now, this place feels settled, not permanent, not fixed forever, but steady enough that each day begins with a sense of familiarity. People rise and their movements feel almost known before they happen. A few walk toward the growing plants, some remain near the fire, others begin small tasks, repairing, arranging, preparing. This quiet repetition has become part of life. But today, let us look more closely at something we have only lightly touched, something that now fills more of their day than before: work. Not the kind of work we think of today with strict hours and clear boundaries, but a gentle, ongoing effort. Before, effort came in waves: a hunt, a gathering, then rest. Now effort is more evenly spread. Small tasks appear throughout the day, not urgent, not overwhelming, but constant: checking the plants, adjusting the soil, watching for changes. These actions require attention every day, and this creates a new relationship with time. Because now, even when nothing dramatic is happening, there is still something to do. Now let us pause here and notice something subtle. When work becomes continuous, rest begins to feel different. Before, rest came naturally after effort. Now rest must sometimes be chosen. A person may sit even while knowing there are things to check, things to maintain. This is a quiet change, but it shapes how the day feels. Now, as the sun rises higher, we return once more to the growing areas. People are no longer just observing, they are interacting more confidently. They clear small stones, they adjust the ground, they protect certain plants more carefully. There is still no formal method, no system written down, but there is growing experience. And with experience comes a kind of quiet confidence. Now something else begins to appear: mistakes. Not everything works. Some plants fail to grow. Some efforts do not bring results. But these moments are not wasted. They are remembered, and over time they shape understanding. This is how knowledge deepens, through trial and quiet reflection. Now, as the day moves forward, we shift our attention back to the group. With more people staying in one place, something else becomes more visible: difference. Not everyone moves at the same pace. Not everyone has the same skill. Some are stronger, some are more careful, some are more observant. These differences begin to matter more, because now the group depends on a wider range of tasks. And slowly, certain individuals may become known for certain things, not formally, not as titles, but through recognition. This person understands the plants. That person makes strong tools. Another watches carefully at night. This is the beginning of specialization, a quiet division of ability. Now daily life becomes more interconnected. People rely on each other in more specific ways, and this deepens the sense of community. But it also creates new dynamics: dependence, expectation, trust, all growing slowly. Now, as afternoon begins to soften, we return to the center of the living space. Here, something else is changing: the idea of space itself. Before, space was open and shared. Now, certain areas begin to feel more defined. A place where food is stored, a place where tools are kept, a place where people rest. These are not marked clearly, but they are understood. And over time, this understanding becomes stronger. Now let us gently move deeper into a more emotional layer of daily life. Security. Before, security came from movement, from the ability to leave, to adapt, to change direction. Now security begins to come from staying, from having something stable, something known. This brings comfort, but it also brings vulnerability, because what is fixed can be threatened. A poor season, a loss of stored food, damage to the place they rely on. These risks are new, or at least felt differently. Now daily life includes a quiet awareness of these possibilities, not fear but caution. Now as the sun begins to lower, we return once more to the gathering at the fire. The group sits together, but tonight there is more discussion, not loud, not intense, but thoughtful. What worked today, what did not, what should be done tomorrow? These conversations are simple, but they shape the future. Now something else begins to appear. Decision making. Before, decisions were often immediate: where to go, what to do next. Now some decisions affect many days. Should we stay here longer? Should we move? How should we use what we have? These questions are shared, and slowly ways of deciding begin to form. Not formal leaders, not structured authority, but influence. Some voices may carry more weight because of experience, because of past success. This is another quiet shift. Now, as the fire burns low and the stars begin to fill the sky once again, we return to stillness. But this stillness holds more thought than before, more reflection, more awareness of change. And within this, another gentle question begins to rise. As humans shape their world more and more, as they settle, build, organize, are they becoming more powerful or simply more responsible? Because to shape something is also to care for it. And to care for something is to be connected to it in a deeper way. This connection will continue to grow, and with it the complexity of daily life. But for now the night remains calm, the fire fades, and the quiet rhythm of life continues. And now very gently we come to rest. The fire has almost disappeared. Only a soft warmth remains, fading slowly into the night. Above, the sky stretches endlessly, filled with stars just as it was thousands of years ago. The people sleep, some close together, some slightly apart, breathing slowly, peacefully. After another simple day, and as we look back across this long, quiet journey, something becomes clear. Early humans did not live in a rush. They did not fill every moment with noise or urgency or endless tasks. They moved with the world, woke with the light, rested with the dark, worked when needed, and paused when they could. Their days were not empty, they were full in a different way. Full of small actions, of careful observation, of quiet understanding. They spent their time walking, watching, learning, sharing. And slowly, over many, many days, they began to change. Not all at once, not through one great discovery, but through small choices. A seed dropped into the soil, a place visited again, a shelter made a little stronger. And from these small moments, a new way of life began to grow. They started to stay, to build, to remember places, not just pass through them. They created patterns, shared knowledge, began to think not only about today but about tomorrow. And in doing so, they stepped quietly into the beginning of the world we know now. Villages would come, then towns, then cities, But all of it began here in these simple days, in these quiet choices. And yet, even as everything changed, something remained. The human need to connect, to share warmth around a fire, to tell stories, to care for one another. These things never disappeared, they simply took new forms. So when we ask, what did early humans actually do all day? The answer is both simple and deep. They lived. They followed the rhythm of the earth. They responded to the world around them. They learned slowly, patiently. And in that quiet, steady way, they built the foundation of everything that came after. Now, as the night settles fully and the last warmth of the fire fades into darkness, there is nothing more to do. No more questions to ask, no more paths to follow, only rest. So let your thoughts grow softer like the fading glow of the fire. And imagine, just for a moment, a world without noise, without hurry, without endless demands. A world where a single day is enough. And in that quiet feeling, gently, slowly, let sleep come.